Lieutenant Eliza Winters gripped the controls of her battle station as warning lights flashed across her armor's display. Around her, the vastness of space lit up with energy blasts and explosions as the Solarian defense fleet fought desperately against the Dark Swarm forces. Shield integrity at 60%, the calm voice of her armor's AI announced. Weapon systems operating at reduced capacity. Eliza ignored the warnings. She had been in worse situations before. The biomechanical armor that encased her body hummed with energy, its living components merged with her nervous system. To Solarians like her, the battle armor wasn't just equipment, it was part of them, a second skin that enhanced their natural abilities. Delta Squadron, regroup and focus fire on the lead destroyer, she ordered through the fleet communication channel. Her squadron of 5 other Solarian fighters moved into formation around her. The human colony of New Dawn glowed blue and green below them. Eliza had never understood why humans insisted on settling so close to the border regions. They were newcomers to space travel, barely a century into their expansion. Yet here they were, right in the path of the Dark Swarm invasion. A blast rocked her ship as an enemy fighter scored a direct hit. Her armor absorbed the impact, but Eliza felt pain shoot through her left side where the biomechanical connections strained under the pressure. Shield integrity at 40%, the AI warned. I can see that, Eliza muttered, spinning her fighter in a tight maneuver to avoid another volley. She returned fire, her thoughts directing the armor to channel more power to the weapons. Her shot connected, turning an enemy fighter into a brief, bright flare. 3 more enemy ships replaced it. Lieutenant Winters were being overwhelmed. On the eastern flank, called the voice of pilot Ryan Mills, requesting backup. Eliza checked her tactical display. The Dark Swarm had brought more ships than intelligence had predicted, much more. This wasn't just a probing attack, it was a full invasion force. All units, fall back to defense position. Theta, she ordered. We need to... Another hit, this one directly to her ship's engine. The armor surrounding her body constricted suddenly as it tried to protect her from the impact. Then horrifyingly, it began to loosen. System failure detected, the AI voice said, now broken and distorted. Symbiotic connection destabilizing. Fear gripped Eliza for the first time. Without the armor's support, her body would be exposed to the neural feedback of a disconnection, an experience few Solarians survived. Emergency protocols engaged, she said, trying to activate the backup systems. Nothing happened. The armor had gone silent. Through her viewport, Eliza watched in horror as the Dark Swarm ships broke through the Solarian line. Her own squadron was scattered, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. Her ship spun out of control, caught in the gravity well of New Dawn. Warnings blared as the heat of atmospheric entry built up around the hull. The biomechanical armor, normally responsive to her every thought, hung heavy and dead against her skin. This isn't happening, Eliza whispered. In Solarian culture, failure was worse than death. To lose both her armor and the battle would mark her as less than nothing. The clouds of New Dawn rushed up to meet her as her fighter plummeted toward the surface. She tried once more to reconnect with her armor, to regain control of her ship, but the systems remained dark. Her last conscious thought before impact was of the disgrace she had brought upon herself and her people. The ship crashed through the upper canopy of a dense forest, metal and composite materials tearing away. Pain exploded through Eliza's body as the failing armor Jack Hudson drove his old salvage truck along the forest edge, following the smoke trail that cut across the morning sky. Something big had crashed during the night. The distant sounds of battle had woken him from sleep. But like most people living on the outskirts of the New Dawn colony, he knew better than to ask questions when the sky lit up with warfare. Probably just another piece of space junk, he muttered to himself, adjusting his worn cap. But deep down, he knew this was different. The crash pattern suggested something had entered the atmosphere under partial control. Jack had been a colony engineer once, before a disagreement with colony leadership had pushed him to the fringes. Now he made his living finding and fixing things others had thrown away. His small workshop at the edge of the settlement was filled with salvaged technology that he repaired and sold back to the colony at discount prices. The truck's wheels struggled against the rough terrain as Jack followed the debris trail deeper into the forest. Broken tree branches and scorched earth marked the path of whatever had fallen from the sky. When he finally reached the crash site, Jack stopped his truck and stared. This was no piece of human technology. The sleek design and strange, almost organic-looking metal of the small ship clearly belonged to something, or someone not from Earth. "Alien," he whispered, both excited and nervous. Humans had encountered several alien species since leaving Earth, but direct contact was rare and generally managed by government officials, not salvage engineers living in the middle of nowhere. Jack approached cautiously, scanning for any sign of movement. The ship had broken open like an egg, its hull split to reveal a cockpit. Inside, something moved weakly. Drawing closer, Jack saw her. A humanoid figure encased in what looked like armor, though parts of it seemed to pulse and shift like something alive. Silver-blue liquid, blood, he realized, leaked from where the armor had cracked and pulled away from pale skin underneath. The alien's eyes opened suddenly, startlingly human except for their violet color. They fixed on Jack, filled with pain, and what he thought might be shame. "Help," the alien whispered in perfect English, then lost consciousness again. Jack knew what he should do. Colony protocol was clear. Report any alien contact immediately. The military would come, quarantine the area, and take the alien for diplomatic processing, which everyone knew really meant study and interrogation. But something about the broken armor and the pain in those eyes made Jack hesitate. He had seen the news reports about the war raging at the edge of human space. This was clearly a soldier, maybe even one who had been fighting to protect human colonies like New Dawn. Screw protocol, Jack decided, carefully reaching into the cockpit. The alien was surprisingly light. As Jack lifted her, he noticed how the armor seemed to cling to her body even in its damaged state. It wasn't just equipment. It seemed almost like a part of her. Back at his truck, Jack gently placed the alien on his flatbed and covered her with a tarp. He then returned to salvage what he could from the ship, knowing instinctively that whatever this armor was, it would need parts to be repaired. The drive back to his workshop took longer than usual as Jack avoided the main roads. The last thing he needed was nosy neighbors reporting him. Inside his cluttered workshop, Jack cleared a space on his main workbench and carefully laid the alien down. Under the bright shop lights, he could see the armor better. It wasn't just mechanical. Parts of it seemed to be growing into the alien's skin, merging technology with biology. "What are you?" he wondered aloud, reaching for his tools. As if in response, a section of the armor weakly illuminated, projecting a small hologram of symbols he couldn't understand. The armor was trying to communicate. The alien's eyes opened again, focusing on Jack with effort. "My armor failed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The battle is lost." "Not yet," Jack replied, picking up his diagnostic scanner. "I'm pretty good at fixing things others think are beyond repair." He didn't know if she understood, but her eyes closed again as she slipped back into unconsciousness. Jack turned to his workbench and began sorting through his tools. This would be unlike anything he had ever attempted to repair before, but he was determined to try, struggled to maintain its protective functions. When the ship finally came to rest in a smoking crater, Lieutenant Eliza Winters lay motionless inside, her once magnificent armor now a broken shell. Blood, silvery blue by human standards, seeped from the cracks where the living components had torn away from her skin. Above, through the broken hull of her ship, the battle continued to rage. It was lost, just as she was. For 3 days, Eliza drifted between consciousness and darkness. Each time she woke, she found the human male bent over her damaged armor, his face tight with concentration. His hands moved with surprising gentleness across the broken sections that once seamlessly merged with her body. "You're making it worse," she said weakly on the third morning. Her throat felt dry, her mind foggy. Jack looked up, surprised to hear her speak clearly for the first time. "Actually, I think I'm starting to understand it," he replied. setting down a tool she didn't recognize. Your armor. It's alive, isn't it? Eliza tried to sit up but couldn't. Without her armor's support, her muscles felt weak and useless. Semi-organic technology. It bonds with our nervous system. Jack nodded as if this confirmed something. That's why I can't just remove it. It's connected to you. To remove it would kill me, Eliza said flatly. As it is now, I am already dying. The connection is failing. Instead of looking worried, Jack seemed oddly excited. I figured that much out. That's why I've been feeding it. Feeding it? Eliza stared at him. Jack pointed to several tubes running from makeshift containers into the still living parts of her armor. Your armor processes energy differently than our tech, but it's similar to some of our bioelectric systems. I created a nutrient solution that seems to be keeping the organic components alive. Eliza couldn't hide her surprise. The human had no knowledge of Solarian technology, yet he had correctly identified one of the armor's most basic needs. Even more surprisingly, he had found a substitute for the specialized nutrients normally provided in Solarian military facilities. Why are you helping me? She asked. Among her people, humans were considered primitive, barely space-capable and still struggling with their own violent nature. Jack shrugged. You needed help. As if that explained everything. He returned to working on a section of armor near her shoulder. As he carefully separated damaged components, images suddenly flashed through Eliza's mind. Memories that weren't her own. A younger Jack building his first engine. Jack arguing with officials in colony uniforms. Jack alone in this workshop, night after night, fixing things others had abandoned. The neural link is active, she gasped. I can see your memories. Jack paused, looking uncomfortable. Yeah, it goes both ways. I've been seeing flashes of your battles, your training. That's how I've been figuring out how this armor works. The idea of a human seeing her memories should have horrified Eliza. Among Solarians, thoughts were private, sacred, yet she felt too weak to protest. Your people, Jack said carefully. They see humans as backwards, don't they? Eliza didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. Yet here we are, Jack continued, returning to his work. Your advanced armor is failing and a backwards human is trying to save it with spare parts. For the first time, Eliza felt something other than shame at her situation. Something almost like curiosity. You won't be able to repair it, she said. Not completely. The technology is beyond your understanding. Jack smiled slightly. Maybe. But I don't need to understand everything to fix the basics. Your armor processes energy, transfers it to your body, and provides structural support and protection. Those are functions I can work with. He held up a piece of salvaged metal that looked nothing like her armor's components. It won't be pretty, and it won't be traditional, but I think I can get it working again. Eliza wanted to tell him it was impossible. Solarian battle armor was the product of centuries of advancement. No human with primitive tools could hope to repair what teams of Solarian engineers spent years perfecting. Jack wiped sweat from his forehead as he carefully joined a human power cell to the Solarian armor's energy distribution system. The workshop was hot, its air thick with the smell of metal and the strange, sweet scent that came from the living parts of Eliza's armor. This shouldn't work, Eliza said, watching him from the workbench where she now sat upright. A week of rest and Jack's improvised nutrient solution had strengthened her enough to move, though the damaged armor still hung from her body like a half-shed skin. But it will, Jack replied confidently. He twisted 2 wires together and sealed them with a special compound he had created by mixing human electronics gel with fluid from the armor's self-repair reservoirs. Eliza frowned. Solarian engineers would never attempt such a connection. The energy patterns are completely different. That's the problem with your engineers, Jack said without looking up. They only see one right way to do things. He reached for a scanner. He had modified to read the armor's energy signatures. Human tech is less advanced, sure, but it's built to be flexible, adaptable. Your armor expects perfect conditions and perfect parts. Out here, we learn to work with what we have. The scanner beeped, showing energy flowing through the new connection. Jack grinned. See? Different doesn't mean incompatible. Eliza felt the armor warm slightly against her skin. Not the full neural connection of properly functioning battle armor, but definitely a response. How are you doing this? Jack shrugged. I'm looking at what the armor needs, not what it's supposed to have. It needs energy, so I'm giving it energy, just in a form it wasn't designed for. I modified the input pathways to accept the different energy pattern. He pointed to a series of small metal discs he had attached along the armor's main power conduits. These convert the energy from my power cells into something closer to what your systems expect. As Jack continued to work, he suddenly stopped and laughed. You know, this reminds me of an old engine I fixed when I was a kid. Everyone said it couldn't run because the original parts weren't available anymore. But engines just need fuel, air, and spark. Doesn't matter how you provide them. Through their weakened neural link, Eliza caught a glimpse of a younger Jack, hands covered in grease, proudly watching an ancient machine roar to life. The memory carried emotions with it. Pride, satisfaction, the joy of proving others wrong. In Solarian training, we are taught to follow protocols exactly, Eliza said. Deviation leads to failure. Sometimes deviation leads to innovation, Jack countered. He connected another component, this one salvaged from the wreckage of Eliza's ship. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. Eliza wasn't sure she understood this human saying, but she watched with growing interest as Jack continued his unorthodox repairs. He mixed technologies that should be incompatible, created interfaces where none should exist, and somehow, impossibly, the armor was responding. Try to activate the shoulder section, Jack suggested, stepping back from his work. Eliza sent a mental command through the weak neural link. She expected nothing to happen. Instead, the armor around her right shoulder hummed and tightened, plates shifting to align properly for the first time since the crash. It worked, she said, unable to hide her astonishment. Of course it worked, Jack replied, though the relief in his voice suggested he hadn't been entirely certain. One section down, about 20 more to go. He picked up another tool and moved to the armor section protecting her left arm. This part's going to be trickier. The biological components here are more damaged. Eliza watched him work, seeing his methods through new eyes. Where before she had seen primitive tinkering, now she recognized something else, a kind of problem-solving her own people rarely practiced. Jack didn't follow a predetermined path. He explored, tested, adjusted, and improvised with whatever was available. Perhaps, Eliza said slowly, there is something to be learned from human methods. Jack smiled without looking up from his work. There's always something to learn from a different perspective. That's the one advantage humans have always had. We're really good at stealing ideas from anywhere we can find them. But as she watched Jack work, connecting human technology to her alien systems with improvised adapters, she felt a strange flutter of something that might have been hope. Rest, Jack told her. The neural connection is draining your energy. I need you strong enough to try reconnecting properly once I get these primary systems working. As Eliza drifted back into unconsciousness, she wondered if she was dreaming. This strange human with his impossible confidence and unorthodox methods. Perhaps this was just the final fantasy of a dying Solarian warrior. But deep within the damaged armor, something responded to Jack's efforts. Something began to heal. The sound of distant engines woke Jack from his short nap at his workbench. He had been working for nearly 2 weeks on Eliza's armor, catching sleep only when exhaustion forced him to rest. Now something was coming, and the deep rumble didn't sound like the usual colony vehicles. Eliza, wake up, Jack said, quickly moving to the window. What he saw made his heart sink. 3 sleek black ships hovered at the edge of the forest, about a mile from his workshop. Even to his untrained eye, they didn't look human. Eliza joined him at the window, moving with new strength. Almost half of her armor now functioned again, allowing her limited mobility. Dark Swarm scouts, she said, her voice tight with tension. They've tracked me here. How? Your ship's transmitter was destroyed in the crash. The armor itself has a unique energy signature, Eliza explained. As you repair it, that signature becomes stronger. They must have detected it. Jack cursed under his breath. We need to leave, now. He quickly gathered his most essential tools and the special nutrient solution he had created for the living components of Eliza's armor. My truck is out back. If we stick to the old mining roads, we might be able to. A blast shook the workshop, sending dust and debris raining from the ceiling. Through the window, Jack saw figures moving through the trees toward them. Tall, angular beings with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Too late, Eliza said. She straightened, and Jack watched as she mentally commanded her partially repaired armor to engage combat mode. Plates shifted and locked, covering more of her body. Get behind me. Your armor is only at 40% capacity, Jack protested. You can't fight them like this. I don't need to defeat them, Eliza replied. Just slow them down long enough for you to escape. Jack shook his head. I'm not leaving you. Another blast hit closer, shattering the workshop's front window. Jack ducked as glass flew past him. When he looked up, Eliza was already moving toward the back door, her movement still stiff but purposeful. They want me, not you, she said. My armor contains tactical data about Solarian fleet movements. If the Darkswarm get it, they could locate and destroy our command ships. Jack followed her, grabbing a heavy wrench as they moved through the cluttered back room of the workshop. All the more reason not to let them capture you. Outside, Jack's old truck sat waiting. He threw his bag of tools in the back and helped Eliza climb in, noting how the effort taxed her still recovering strength. The armor might be functioning better, but her body was still healing from the neural shock of the initial disconnection. As Jack started the engine, a beam of energy sliced through the air above them, hitting a tree and setting it ablaze. Through the rearview mirror, he saw 3 Darkswarm soldiers emerging from around the side of his workshop. Hold on, Jack warned, slamming his foot on the accelerator. The truck lurched forward, bouncing over the rough terrain behind his property. He steered toward an old service road that led deeper into the mining territory, a maze of abandoned tunnels and equipment he knew well from years of salvage work. Eliza gripped the dashboard as the truck jolted over rocks and fallen branches. They'll follow us. Counting on it, Jack replied, a plan forming in his mind. The old mining complex is a maze, and some sections are unstable. More energy beams flashed behind them, one grazing the truck's rear fender. Jack felt the vehicle shudder but kept driving, pushing the engine harder than it was meant to go. Your armor. Can any of the weapon systems work yet? He asked. Eliza closed her eyes, concentrating. A small panel opened on her right arm, revealing what looked like a miniature cannon. Short range only, and I have limited energy reserves. Save it, Jack advised. We might need it later. As they plunged deeper into the forest, following the winding service road, Jack glanced at Eliza. Even damaged, even the abandoned mining facility loomed ahead, a massive complex of concrete and metal buildings half reclaimed by the forest. Jack drove the truck straight into a large equipment shed, cutting the engine as soon as they were hidden from view. They're still following, Eliza said, her armor's sensors picking up movement despite its limited functionality. Jack grabbed his tools and a small portable power unit. This way. There's an access tunnel that leads to the main processing area. We can set up there. They moved quickly through dark corridors, Jack lighting the way with a small flashlight. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the metal walls. Eliza moved better now, her armor responding more smoothly to her commands, though Jack noticed she still favored her right side. Here, Jack said finally, pushing open a heavy door. They entered a large room filled with old equipment. Dust covered everything, but the space was dry and secure. This processing center has its own power generator. If I can get it running, we'll have everything we need to continue repairs. Eliza scanned the room, her armor's tactical systems mapping, potential defensive positions. How did you know about this place? I've been salvaging parts from here for years, Jack explained, moving toward a large control panel. Colony officials don't come out this far. Too much radiation from the old mining operations. Radiation? Eliza asked sharply. Jack grinned. Nothing dangerous to us, but the background levels are just high enough to interfere with standard scanners. That's why I brought us here. It might mask your armor's energy signature. As Jack worked to restore power to the facility, Eliza explored the large room. Through the neural link with her armor, she sensed Jack's familiarity with this place. Images flashed in her mind. Jack discovering valuable equipment, carefully removing parts, trading them in the colony for supplies. "You've lived on the edges of your society," she observed. "By choice." Jack nodded without looking up from the control panel. "I don't do well with authority, or rules that don't make sense." The lights suddenly flickered on, illuminating the vast space. Jack whooped in triumph. "Got it! Now we have power to work with." He quickly set up a makeshift workbench using an old table. "We don't have much time. Those Dark Swarm scouts won't give up easily." As Jack laid out his tools, Eliza felt something change in the neural connection between them. His focus narrowed, his mind working with unusual clarity. She had seen this kind of mental state before. Solarian engineers entered it during complex repairs, but she hadn't expected to find it in a human. "I have an idea," Jack said suddenly. "Your armor's biological components are struggling because they're not getting the right nutrients, right? What if we don't try to replicate Solarian nutrients exactly?" He pulled out a small vial of the solution he had been using. "This works, but not perfectly. What if instead we redesign parts of the armor's biological interface to accept human-compatible compounds?" Eliza stared at him. "That would require reprogramming the armor's base code. It's impossible without a full neural link, I know," Jack finished. He pointed to his head. "But we already have a partial link. And I've been studying the patterns, the way the armor thinks." He pulled out a small device he had salvaged from her ship. "This is a neural amplifier, isn't it? Used for emergency field repairs?" Eliza nodded slowly. "How did you know?" "I saw it in your memories," Jack admitted. "If we use this to strengthen our connection, I might be able to help your armor adapt to what we have available." The idea was radical, dangerous even. To allow a human direct access to her armor's base programming went against every protocol Eliza had been taught. But conventional approaches had failed her already. "We would need to create a two-way neural bridge," she said slowly. "The strain could damage your mind. Human brains aren't designed for Solarian neural technology." Jack shrugged. "Neither is human technology designed to power Solarian armor, but we made that work." He held up the neural amplifier. "I trust you not to fry my brain if you can help it." Outside, in the distance, they heard the whine of Dark Swarm ships. Time was running out. "Do it," Eliza decided. "If we fail, the Dark Swarm will capture us anyway." Jack nodded and began connecting the neural amplifier to both himself and Eliza. As he worked, he smiled slightly. "You know, for an advanced alien warrior, you're becoming remarkably open to crazy human ideas." Despite everything, Eliza found herself smiling back. "Desperate times, Jack Hudson. Desperate times." Unted, there was a dignity to her that impressed him. She had gone from dismissing humans as primitive to trusting him with her life in just 2 weeks. "We're going to make it," he promised her. "And then we're going to finish fixing that armor of yours." Eliza nodded, her violet eyes scanning the forest around them. "For the first time since my crash, I actually believe that might be possible." The neural bridge formed like a flash of lightning through Jack's mind. One moment he was sitting across from Eliza, the neural amplifier humming between them. The next he was swimming in a sea of alien code and biological patterns. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose. "Focus." Eliza's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Don't try to understand everything. Look for the patterns that feel familiar." Jack fought against the flood of information. Somewhere in this storm of data was the armor's basic operating system. He needed to find it, to understand how it interacted with the biological components. Gradually, certain patterns began to make sense. He recognized energy pathways, command structures, and feedback loops. The armor wasn't just a tool, it was a partner, designed to anticipate and enhance its wearer's abilities. "I see it," Jack said, though he wasn't sure if he spoke aloud or just thought the words. "The core system expects specific biological markers that aren't available in our environment. Through the neural connection, Jack sensed Eliza's agreement. Together, they dove deeper into the armor's programming. Jack's human mind approached problems differently, seeing connections and possibilities that Eliza's more structured Solarian thinking missed. Here, Jack identified a subsystem controlling nutrient processing. If we modify this to accept alternative compounds, the armor can use materials available on Earth. The work was delicate, dangerous. One wrong change could damage the armor, permanently, or harm Eliza. But Jack moved with surprising confidence, guided partly by intuition and partly by the flashes of knowledge he absorbed through the neural link. Outside their shared mental workspace, time passed. Their bodies remained seated across from each other in the abandoned mining facility, the neural amplifier glowing softly between them as dark swarm scouts drew ever closer. Within the neural space, Jack implemented his most radical idea yet. The armor keeps trying to return to its original specifications, he explained to Eliza. But what if instead of fighting that tendency, we embrace it? He crafted a new directive. Rather than trying to be a perfect Solarian battle armor with one correct configuration, the system would continuously adapt to available resources and changing conditions. This goes against all Solarian design principles, Eliza protested, though Jack could sense her curiosity. That's the point, Jack replied. Your armor failed because it couldn't adapt when damaged. I'm giving it the ability to evolve. As the changes took hold, the armor began to respond. Physical repairs Jack had made with human technology were now being accepted and integrated rather than rejected. The biological components adapted to process the nutrients he had provided. Suddenly, the neural connection flickered. A warning flashed through both their minds. External danger approaching. They pulled out of the neural space to find the mining facility shaking around them. Dust fell from the ceiling as the distant sound of explosions echoed through the corridors. They've found us, Eliza said, rising to her feet. To her surprise, the armor moved with her smoothly, responding better than it had since before the crash. Jack stood too, swaying slightly from the mental exertion. Did it work? In answer, Eliza commanded her armor to engage. Plates slid into place, sealing gaps and forming a complete protective shell. Energy hummed through pathways that had been dead only hours before. Displays flickered to life before her eyes, showing tactical information and system status. Armor functionality at 78%, she reported, amazement clear in her voice. How is this possible? Jack smiled tiredly. Human ingenuity meets alien technology. We didn't fix it. We made it better. Another explosion rocked the building closer this time. Through newly restored sensors, Eliza detected multiple dark swarm signatures converging on their location. We need to leave, she said. They've brought reinforcements. Jack grabbed his remaining tools. There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to the southern mining pits. From there, Dawn broke over New Dawn Colony as Jack and Eliza reached the communication array. The massive dish sat on a hill overlooking the settlement, usually guarded, but now abandoned as the colony's limited defense forces dealt with dark swarm attacks on the other side of the settlement. They're creating a diversion, Eliza said, her armor's enhanced sensors picking up the pattern of enemy movements. The main force is still coming this way. Jack quickly accessed the array's control panel. What frequency does your fleet use? They won't be using standard channels, Eliza replied. After my squadron was defeated, they would have changed all communication protocols. Jack's fingers flew over the controls. Then we'll send a message they can't ignore. He looked up at Eliza. Your armor. Can it broadcast a Solarian identification signature? Eliza nodded, understanding his plan. She placed her hand on the communication panel, allowing her armor to interface with the human technology. The two systems connected, modified, by Jack's adaptations to her armor. Broadcasting now, she said, but the dark swarm will detect it too. That's what I'm counting on, Jack replied with a grim smile. He pointed to the rolling hills beyond the colony's edge. Those hills contain a network of old mining tunnels. Some are still filled with unprocessed ore. Realization dawned on Eliza's face. You want to lure them there? Exactly. Jack pulled up a map on the array's display. We broadcast your signal, lure the dark swarm into position, and then we bring the tunnels down on them, Eliza finished. Through their neural bond, she had glimpsed this plan forming in Jack's mind. As they finalized their preparations, the comm system suddenly crackled to life. Unidentified Solarian signal. This is Admiral Kara Nichols of the Solarian Fleet. Identify yourself. Eliza straightened in surprise. Admiral Nichols, this is Lieutenant Eliza Winters. My ship was downed during the battle for New Dawn. I am alive and operational with the assistance of a human ally. There was a pause before the Admiral responded. Lieutenant Winters, our records listed you as killed in action. Your squadron was lost. Not all of it, Admiral, Eliza replied. And I have critical information on Dark Swarm tactics. They're attempting to capture this colony as we speak. Jack monitored his scanner. Dark Swarm ships approaching from the south. 6 minutes until they reach our position. Admiral Nichols' voice became urgent. We can have ships at your location in 20 minutes, Lieutenant. Can you hold that long? Jack and Eliza exchanged glances. We have a plan, Admiral, Eliza said. But we'll need precise timing. As Eliza outlined their strategy, Jack finished, programming the colony's mining charges, long abandoned but still functional. When the Dark Swarm forces passed over the correct section of tunnels, the explosions would collapse the ground beneath them. Let's move, Jack said when they finished. We need to be in position when they arrive. They raced to the overlook point Jack had selected, arriving just as the first Dark Swarm ships appeared on the horizon. From their vantage point, they could see the entire valley and the trap they had set. Your armor's energy signature is drawing them in, Jack observed as the enemy ships adjusted their course toward the tunnels. Eliza nodded, her hand resting on the detonator. The fleet is moving into position as well. They'll be here soon after the explosion. As the Dark Swarm ships moved over the target zone, Eliza hesitated for just a moment. My people would never have considered such a strategy, using the environment itself as a weapon. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best, Jack replied. Eliza pressed the detonator. The ground beneath the Dark Swarm forces erupted, sending ships crashing into each other in the collapsing earth below. Those that avoided the initial collapse found themselves facing Eliza, her armor now functioning at near full capacity, its weapon systems enhanced by Jack's modifications. When the Solarian fleet arrived 15 minutes later, they found a very different scene than they expected. The Dark Swarm forces were scattered, half buried in rubble or disabled by precise shots from Eliza's weapons. Admiral Nichols herself led the landing party, stopping in astonishment when she saw Eliza's armor, a strange hybrid of Solarian technology and human innovation. Lieutenant Winters, the Admiral said, I believe you have quite a story to tell. Eliza nodded, looking at Jack, who stood beside her. Yes, Admiral. It begins with failure, but ends with something new, something better. Jack smiled as the sun rose fully over New Dawn Colony. Isn't that how all the best human stories go? He can reach the colony's emergency communication array. Eliza touched his arm, feeling the strange mixture of human and Solarian technology flowing through her armor. If we can contact my fleet, we might be able to do more than just escape. Understanding dawned in Jack's eyes. You want to fight back. This colony is in danger, Eliza said. And thanks to you, I'm back in the fight. She extended her hand, to him a human gesture she had learned from his memories. Are you with me? Jack took her hand without hesitation. Try to stop me.